Hey everybody, Randy Patterson here with Boomerocity. Guess what? We're not going to be talking to a musician today, or a singer, or anybody in the music business for that matter. And I want to preface what I'm about to say with this. I'm not one of those type of people that put my personal life out there for everybody to see or rummage through, but I'm a divorcee, and I've had those ups and downs of that kind of thing and relationships after that. And one thing I wish that I had available to me or been aware of were some good people to listen to on, say, YouTube or on Instagram or websites to go to, newsletters to subscribe to find out what the new normal was. I was a divorcee 9.5 years ago. I'd been married for 34 years and dating the same woman for 4 years prior to that. So I pretty much spent my whole life off the market, so to speak. And I came into it not having a clue what to think or how to feel. And more importantly, I came into it without really knowing who the new me is and was going to be. And so I made a lot of mistakes. I goofed up a lot. And boy, I would have given anything to have had someone like this woman that you see the pictures behind me. Her name is Jillian Turecki. And she has a podcast. She's on Instagram. She's on Facebook. And she has great reels and stories and programming that helps people with relationships. And there's a lot of great ones out there, but I purposely wanted to start with Jillian because she was the one that really opened my eyes on some things. I was turned on to her by someone and I started listening, started watching. I started really paying attention. And what a huge, huge help she has been, and some of her peers as well. You can follow her, Google her, just Google her, and you can find all the ways you can catch her. But the big thing is on Instagram. Jillian, you can see spelled here behind me, but if you're listening to the podcast, it's Jillian, and Turecki, Turecki. If you Google that, you'll find exactly where to catch her. She's on all your major podcast platforms. You can listen to her there, and I highly encourage you to listen to her if you fall in one of three categories. Number one, if you're a baby boomer like we are, if you're watching this, you probably are, and you're currently in a relationship, whether long time married or relatively newly married or somewhere in between, listen to her podcast. Number two, maybe you're a couple have been around for a long time, or maybe new blended couple, and you're finding yourself being empty nesters, and now you're trying to figure out who's this person you've been married to all along. Jillian has some great advice in that area. And thirdly, if you're a baby boomer and for whatever reason, through the tragedy of death or divorce, you find yourself alone again, and especially if you've not been on the dating scene for quite a few years, it can be a shock. It can be a rude awakening, and you can go into it with some misconceptions. I know that was the case with me. So in any of those scenarios, Jillian has some amazing advice and is always consistent on it. Very, very good, very solid. And I highly recommend her work. You get to hear a little bit of news while you listen to this interview, and I don't want to spoil it. You're just going to have to listen to the interview. So I hope you indulge me with this interview, because I think it'd really help you no matter where you fit in this spectrum. Please listen. Please subscribe to her work because it's good. It's worth listening to. And if you feel like you're in a great relationship, still listen to Jillian because she gives great advice on maintaining relationships and self-help as well. So without any further ado, here's what I hope and trust will be the first of many more interviews in the future with the great Jillian Turecki. So until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerocity. Take care. What a pleasure to finally get to meet you.
Oh
I
my
feel
God,
like
look
I
at
know
your
you want.
background.
Well, I hope you don't mind me stealing a few posters from your
Oh, I
organization.
love it. Thank you so much. I love it. It's great.
Well, it's a pleasure to finally get to meet you. I feel like I know you from all your reels and your stories and Instagram and all that kind of stuff. And I'm
Uh,
sure you hear that all the time, but it's a pleasure to meet you. And honestly, to kind of kick off a little bit different direction than I'm adding to what I normally do. I talk to a lot of rock stars, and I thought, well, I want to get into talking to relationship coaches, and why not talk to the rock star of relationship coaching, and that is you. So
I'm flattered. Thank you so much, Randy. The
thank
pleasure's
you.
all
Before we
mine.
get into some questions here, I'm just curious, how has the post-pandemic world been treating you and your work and audiences and things like that? Have you seen any change since before the pandemic?
Oh, I mean, I think a lot of people kind of blew up during the pandemic who were in sort of social media, and because that's when people started really needing more help. Everyone always needs help with relationships, right?
Mhm.
So that's just that's always going to be something, regardless of what's going on in the world, that people are going to need help with. So as far as business is concerned, all that is good.
Good. I imagine with all that time of us all, I mean, I'm single, and so I didn't have this issue, but I'm sure a lot of people having to spend a lot of time together for the first time, and Lord knows how long for such a sustained period. That probably I could see where where that
Yeah, a
ginned up a
lot of
lot of
people.
interest in your work.
Yeah, and it destroyed a lot of relationships, actually. A lot of marriages ended because, they were used to one person at least leaving the home for, 8 hours a day. And they weren't used to spending, honestly, so much time together.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, you combine the stress. So I mean, obviously some couples made it and they were fine with it. I know some people who really enjoyed it. They were working really hard and they just had a baby, and so this was sort of like a forced time out. And some people, it really changed their marriage or their relationship for the worse. So, you know
Well, that's why I wanted to get with you on this about all this, because in a way it kind of mirrors what a lot of baby boomers, and that's my wheelhouse, is dealing with people my age and
mhm.
older. And you know the pandemic kind of mirrors what I call the empty nest syndrome in relationships. And then of course, being single at a late age, there's a lot of relationship related issues. I know for me, my divorce was 9.5 years ago, and for the first time in almost 40 years, I had to learn about myself. And I wish in the beginning I'd known about you and some of your peers in this kind of work. And so when I started seeing a lot of this stuff, I thought, my generation really needs to hear from you guys and be aware of you guys, because I didn't have that benefit. And so are you seeing a big shift in, first of all, the dynamic or the demographic of your audience? Are you seeing people older like myself and older coming to your body of work and benefiting from it?
Yes. I mean, I would say the majority of people, because it's the younger people who are more on social media, and also the younger people are more like consuming podcasts. But that being said, I have seen a lot more people, baby boomer, generation, being drawn to my work. I think stage of life is a very important thing to consider. And every stage of life has its benefits and it has its challenges. But I think that the thing about being older, I mean, we know all the things that suck about getting older. But the things that are really great is that you really understand yourself better.
Mhm.
You understand what you want. You understand what you don't want. People are a little less afraid to go after what they want when they're older. And you just tolerate a lot less BS, I think, the older that you become. Every adult generation, let's say over the age of, 22, has their own sort of collective limiting beliefs.
Mhm.
It's like the people in their late 20s and early 30s, it's, I have to get married. I'm too old to get married, or I'm 40, who's going to want me because, I don't have a kid, whatever it is. And then it's as people get older, it's, well, the dating pool is smaller and, no one wants me because I'm too old. And all of it is BS. All of it is really not true. The thing is that as you get older, you're a baby boomer. You're not 90. Your life is not over. It could actually be the best chapter of your life. You
Okay.
know who you are. You're not trying to find yourself. I mean, yeah, we're always trying to find ourselves. That kind of that personal development never ends. But I think that, one of the benefits of getting older is that, you just, like I said, you know who you are
Mhm.
and you don't have to prove yourself to anyone. So, my message to baby boomers is you should be having a lot more fun. This should be the time where, like, you really take life by the horns and you have fun and you date and you meet people and you find someone who wants to live the rest of their days with you. Someone who wants, like, there's less games. Our priorities shift as we get older.
Mhm.
And I think that the older we become, priorities such as friendship, priorities such as shared values, priorities such as um, peace, these are the things that become more important with age.
Mhm.
Like as our hormones start to decline, what begins to go up is our desire for more simplicity.
Yes. Yes.
And I think that that should be embraced. That should be embraced. You don't want to compete with the younger folks. You just want to be you.
Mhm.
And I wouldn't get too tripped up on trying to psychoanalyze yourself.
Hmm.
I think you should just say, I made it this far. Now what?
Mhm.
What do I want this next chapter to be?
Good
I don't
point.
know if that answers your question, but that's a lot of how I speak to people who are older who might be saying, well, maybe I'm too old. What do I do? Blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know. Like, haven't we at a certain age earned the right to do whatever it is that really makes us happy?
I like to think so.
Yeah, instead of what we all do when we're younger, trying to please our parents, trying to please this person, trying to be good enough for this person, trying to do this. I mean, isn't the whole point of getting older is letting go of all that narrative?
Yes. And I think I'd be curious to hear if you've run into this with that demographic. I know when I first became single, I sought out, um, I wanted a female counselor, therapist, what do you want to call them? And because I had been out of circulation for 40 years essentially, and with one person, all that kind of thing. And for me, Jillian, I had to learn, I found out a lot of things I didn't know. I mean, you said, yeah, we know who we are, but I kind of think in my case, I didn't know who I was because you
Mm,
kind of lose yourself in your career. You lose yourself caring for others, all that kind of thing. Do you see a lot of
sure.
that in the baby boomer demographic? And what advice would you have for those of us who have found ourselves in that position and needing to learn, probably not get to know ourselves, but get to know ourselves better, perhaps?
I think it's similar to what I just said, which is letting go of all those old beliefs of having to be enough, of having to achieve to be enough. I think it's really about reflecting on the last 20 years of your life, 30 years of your life, and saying, oh, this is what's been motivating me all this time to achieve, to do this, to do that. I don't need that anymore to feel good enough. What's most important to me now? Because we all have the need to feel safe. We all have the need for some sort of adventure and fun. We all have the need to feel important. We all have the need for love and connection. We all have a spiritual need to grow and to give back. So, with every stage of life, even though every single person has all of those needs, like I said earlier, our priorities shift with age. So does our need structure. So I think that if you find yourself and you're like, oh, I'm whatever, I'm 60 years old or I'm 65 years old, and I'm just coming out of a marriage and it's like, now what? Okay. I think it's what I would say to anyone is, well, what's most important to you now? What do you want to value now? What do you want to have be different in your life now? And so that process of discovering yourself is a process that is uncovered through a series of questions that we ask ourselves. What's most important to me now? What do I need most now that I didn't need before? What do I need less of? What do I want the next 20 years of my life to be like? What do I want? What values do I want to live by? If I were to give one word to describe the next chapter of my life, what would that word be? And so those are the questions that one has to ask themselves is, who am I today? And we do that through self-reflection.
Agreed. Agreed. Have you seen any other unique issues or challenges with people from the baby boomer generation? I know for me, it's been trying to, set aside the old baggage and even not, realizing that things have changed. We've got to approach things differently. Are you seeing anything else that's unique to our demographic?
Giving up and not taking care of their bodies.
Mm. Mm.
And therefore looking and acting older than they really are.
Mm-hmm.
Giving into the belief it's too late for me. That's what I see the most. It's too late for me. Why bother? I'm going to stop taking care of myself and my body.
Mm.
And actually what's the most important thing for a baby boomer is to get into the gym, is to get outside, is to start taking care of their bodies, is to start paying more attention to that. And to stop telling themselves, oh, it's too late, I'm old, this or that. It's ridiculous. This literally could be the best chapter of your life. But people get stressed out. They get overwhelmed with certain beliefs. They stop trying. They stop taking care of themselves. And then next thing you know, you're 80 when you're really 60. And so that's really what I see the most. But then I also have met so many baby boomers who are killing it. They're out dating, they're having fun, they're building new community. And that's what has to happen. You need to build community. You got to do the things that make that you find. It's like I said, what's most important to you right now? Is it connection? Is it giving back? What is something that you always wanted to do, but you never made time to do because it just wasn't the right time in your 30s or 40s or maybe even early 50s that you want to do now? Start that new because it all begins with the relationship that we have with ourselves. It's the most important thing.
Great.
And so rather than it's not that I want to discourage people from reflecting on their stuff and all of that. It's so much a better use of, instead of just analyzing your trauma all the time, go out and start meeting your needs and living the life that you want to live.
I know that was the case for me. It took me a while to get there, but definitely it was something I had a psychological hurdle I had to get over. Uh,
Totally. Which was what? Which was the psychological hurdle?
that to look out for my own needs,
Yeah.
to appreciate myself, to love myself.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
that was really what it boiled down to
Hmm.
because of my upbringing, because of my experiences, and what I felt my obligations were. Um, the last person I loved was myself. And that was a big, and I still deal with certain aspects of that, of trying to get my head completely around that. And it was, it was an eye opener for me. And like I said, I still kind of deal with that, but I feel like, and again, I said this when we first logged on here, I so wish there were people I knew of, people like you and your peers to listen to, because it would have been so much of it. It'd been so helpful for me to move forward, in this new stage of life, and finding out what the new normal is, which was a big deal, big surprise for me, you
Sure.
know.
Sure. Sure.
But so let's say you're talking to two different sets of people, either single or couples. One of them are is a couple who finds themselves being empty nesters, brand new kids go off to college, or they get married and move out of the home. And the other is a man or a woman, baby boomer, who finds themselves single all of a sudden for whatever reason,
Hmm.
divorce, death, whatever the case may be. In addition to, and it goes without saying, if I'm talking to them, I'm going to say, check out Jillian on Love, check out some of these other people, because they're gold mines of information that will help you. They will help you. Don't doubt me. But if they're sitting in front of you and they're saying, hey, this just happened, what would be some of the initial advice and guidance, probably more than anything, that you would give them? Their life just changed in those ways. What would you say to them?
Well, let's start with the empty nesters, because you're kind of asking about two vastly different
Hmm.
stages of life. So if a couple is, let's say their kids leave the house, they go to college, right? That's what I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Um, what would my advice be to them? Celebrate. I don't know, have a party, plan a trip, start putting things in the calendar that they can look forward to every week, every month, every year.
Hmm.
Lots of date nights, having people over for, whatever kind of party that they like to have, spending more time with community and friends,
Hmm.
spending more time connecting with each other.
Big one. Yeah.
Because, one of the mistakes that couples make is that they make their children too much of a focal point.
Yes.
So, right? So their children, they start focusing on the kids more than they're focusing on their marriage. So
Yeah.
this is a time to reconnect. It's a time to sit down and take out the piece of paper and then start sharing your dreams with one another, your goals. What are the goals of your relationship? What do you want to do? Do you want to sell the home and move into a different home?
Hmm.
Do you want to, what do you want to, what do you want to do? It's time to create a blueprint of what the next chapter of their life together is going to be. So that's how I would work with empty nesters.
Okay. Good stuff.
Very, very important. It's so important to go into action. Action is very important. Rather than just sitting there and mulling it over and feeling sort of helpless, get yourself into action. Start creating your future together. Start connecting with one another and celebrate, because it's a great thing when the kids leave the house. And it's an opportunity to focus on other areas of your life. It's an opportunity to focus on the relationship. I know this is much easier said than done, but life is filled with so many transitions. And whenever we transition from one place to another place, we have to let go. Like, we can't open a door if we don't close a door before that. And the more we can adapt to the inevitable transitions of life, the happier we are going to be. So you could focus on the fact that the house is empty, or you could focus on the fact that, like, you have a whole new chapter that awaits you that can be very, very exciting. And sometimes that empty nest might highlight to the couple where they are disconnected, because their whole life, their marriage has been held together by the glue of their co-parenting. Well, that's not going to be an easy realization, but it's going to be a challenge that should be taken on. That, okay, clearly we have some work to do as a couple. Let's reconnect. So that's really important. Sorry, there's a little drilling in the background. And then what would I say to the baby boomer who's recently single? It's scary. I think it's very hard. I think that the older people get, and then there's a breakup or a divorce or someone dies, it feels a lot scarier. It's not like someone can just easily fill that shoe. It's not like you're 25 or 30 and you can just get out there. So it is scary. But meeting another person and getting yourself out there is really, truly not impossible. It's what goes on in here. It really, really is. So a lot of people will say, well, no one's going to want me. I'll never get another chance at love. I'm this age. But I hate to say it, but it really is a mindset thing.
I agree.
So every generation has its challenges. The 35-year-old woman will say, I can't find a man because all he wants is, or the 40-year-old woman might say, I can't find a man because he just wants the 30-year-old. So like every generation has its thing. Yeah. Has its challenges. And, in Europe, the older people don't really think this. The women in their 60s and 70s, they're not putting a bunch of collagen in their face. They're not, they feel women, they're not ageist in Europe. This is very much an American phenomenon. Mm. And so you have to understand that there is a cultural component to this. So you got to just live your life and put yourself out there and date and build and foster your community.
Great. And learn things from people like you. I'll say, I'm not saying that to patronize you. I mean that with all my heart. So to that point, I've got 3 more things I want to ask you. The first one being, I know how to follow you because I follow you. Please tell new fans that are hearing about you for the first time, people my age, how can they find out more about you, Jillian?
Well, I mean, honestly, you just need to know the spelling of my first and last name. And you need to know the name of my podcast, Jillian on Love. And then Jillian Turecki is like my Instagram would be the best place for baby boomers, and my website, and my podcast. Good and deal. Then I am in the process of writing a book, and that will be useful for people as well.
Okay, I need to interview you again when close to that book coming out. Okay,
that will happen. That'll happen.
All right, good deal. You just answered my next question, and that is, what's on your radar for, say, the next year or so. So now that there's a book in the works, what else you've got going on your that's on your
Honestly,
radar?
it's a book. I'm releasing in a couple of weeks a Substack, so it'll be a newsletter where it will be like a blog.
Mhm.
So where you can read more of my writing and also just get some advice. My podcast and my book. And I have a very special community called the Conscious Woman. This is for women only. And I would say everyone in there is like, I would say about 28 years old to about 62 years old. And so, yes, so that's for women of all ages and all stages of life. And yeah, that's what's cooking for me right now. The book is enough.
I
It's a lot.
bet. Believe
It's
me,
a
I
lot.
know the writing piece of that can be quite challenging.
Yeah, the book is
And so,
that's yeah,
well, I'm
exactly.
hoping that age span grows a little bit after we get this
I
out
would
there.
love
Because
that. I would love that.
I firmly believe in what you're doing, Jillian, and
Thank you.
I I I mean, I became a fan. I was turned on to you by someone else, and I was like, "Wow, this is cool." So I started, checking this all out. That's why a couple months ago I reached out to your people about having this chat. So
Thanks,
I
Randy.
love what you're doing. I think you're God's hand extended basically to a broad range of people who need to hear what you have to say, and I just love what you're doing. So for a final question,
Yeah.
I usually ask this of the rockers and country artists and blues artists that I interview. And unfortunately, I get to interview them more than once. So maybe every other time I ask them this question. And it's always interesting what they have to see. But, you're a young woman, you got a great work ahead of you. You're going to be influencing countless thousands upon thousands of people. When it's all said and done, when you hang up those headphones from the last podcast and say you've transitioned to the next plane, you're at the pearly gates, what do you hope your legacy is, and how do you want to be remembered?
Hmm. I was just someone who really helped people learn how to love and be in a relationship and love themselves. Honestly, that's the most important thing. Just people who, as someone who really was an educator about relationships and helped as many people as possible to um, overcome their psychological barriers to whatever was that's keeping them from enjoying their lives and having a fulfilling life and a fulfilling relationship.
Very good. Well, you're doing that, and I can speak
Thank
as
you.
one who has listened. And I appreciate all that you've done and are doing and continue to do and will be
Thank you.
doing. And I can't wait to see that and read that book. And I can't wait to talk to you about that book. So let's for sure make that happen. Thanks so much. I
Thanks,
appreciate
Randy.
this more than you'll ever know. And I look forward to
Oh,
talking to you again down the road.
thanks, Randy. I appreciate it too. Have a good one.
And be safe. Bye bye.
You too. Bye.